The year was 2187, and Earth had changed much since the old days. Humans had built cities on the moon. They had sent colonies to Mars. The nations of Earth no longer fought each other as they once did. Instead, they worked together under one government called the United Earth Defense Council. It was a time of hope, a time of growth, but it was also the time when humanity learned they were not alone in the universe. Doctor sat in her chair at the lunar observatory, staring at her computer screen. She had spent 20 years watching the stars. She knew every pattern, every light, every movement in the night sky. That was why she noticed when something was wrong. "That cannot be right," she whispered to herself. On her screen, stars were disappearing. Not one or two, but hundreds. Something was blocking them. Something huge was moving through the darkness of space, coming toward Earth. She ran the numbers again and again. Each time the answer was the same. The shadow was not a cloud of dust. It was not a natural thing at all. It was a fleet of ships, larger than anything humans had ever built, and it was heading straight for them. Within hours, the news reached Earth. The United Earth Defense Council called an emergency meeting. Military leaders from every nation gathered in one room. Scientists showed them the images. The shadow was still far away, but it was moving fast. "What do they want?" asked one general. "We do not know," said Doctor. "They have not tried to communicate with us." The answer came 3 days later, and it was not the answer anyone wanted. The alien ships arrived without warning. They did not send messages. They did not ask for peace or war. They simply descended from the sky like a dark cloud falling to Earth. The first cities to fall were Mumbai and Berlin. 3 cities on 3 continents attacked at the same moment. The aliens called themselves though humans would not learn this name until much later. They were not like anything humans had imagined. They had no metal ships that could be shot down. They had no soldiers that could be killed with bullets. They were made of shadow itself. They were living darkness, creatures that fed on heat and light and life. When they came to a city, they brought the darkness with them. Street lights went out, car engines stopped, even the sun seemed to dim, and then the shadows began to move. People ran, but there was nowhere to run. The darkness followed them into buildings, into tunnels, into every hiding place. Those who were caught did not die quickly. They did not kill for food alone. They fed on fear. They fed on pain. They fed on the very thoughts inside human minds. 8 million people lived. By the end of the first night, half of them were gone. Not dead, but taken, absorbed into the darkness. Their screams echoed through empty streets where no living person remained to hear them. Earth's military responded with everything they had. Fighter jets flew over Mumbai, launching missiles into the heart of the shadow. The missiles passed through without hitting anything. Tanks rolled into Berlin, firing shells at the darkness. The shells did nothing. Nuclear weapons were prepared, but the generals hesitated. How could they bomb their own cities when the enemy was made of nothing but shadow? For 3 weeks the attacks continued. They moved from city to city, always choosing the largest, the most full of life. They seemed to enjoy the fear they caused. They moved slowly, giving people time to run, time to hope, time to believe they might escape. Then the darkness would catch them anyway. The world fell into chaos. Governments blamed each other. People fled to the countryside, to the mountains, to anywhere they thought might be safe. But they did not hurry. They had done this before. They had done this to 1,000 worlds over millions of years. They knew that prey always ran and prey was always caught in the end. It was during the darkest hour that Admiral Way stood before the remaining leaders of Earth. She was a small woman, 60 years old, with gray hair and cold eyes. She had fought in 3 wars and had never lost. Now she faced an enemy that could not be fought with guns or bombs. "We have tried everything," said one general. "Nothing works. Perhaps we should try to communicate with them. Perhaps we should surrender." Admiral did not raise her voice. She did not need to. When she spoke, everyone listened. "Surrender to what?" she asked. They do not want our planet, they do not want our resources, they want us, our bodies, our minds, our children. There is nothing to negotiate. Then what do you suggest? Asked another leader. We cannot fight shadows. Admiral looked around the room. She saw fear in every face. She saw despair. She saw people ready to give up. But she also saw something else. She saw humans. The same humans who had survived ice ages and plagues. The same humans who had split the atom and walked on other worlds. The same humans who had never, in all their long history, accepted defeat. They think we are prey, she said. They look at us and see animals waiting to be eaten. That is their mistake. That is the mistake every enemy of humanity has ever made. She walked to the window and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, they waited in their ships of shadow, watching, feeding, enjoying their slow victory. We will find a way, Admiral continued. We will study them. We will learn their weaknesses. And when we do, we will teach them something they have never learned in all their millions of years. What is that? Asked Doctor. Admiral turned back to face the room. For the first time, something like a smile crossed her face. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had just spotted her prey. Fear, she said. We will teach them what it means to fear. The room was silent. Outside, the darkness continued to spread. Cities continued to fall. Millions continued to die, but in that moment something changed. Hope was not dead. It was only waiting. The war for Earth had just begun. 6 months had passed since the first came to Earth. In that time, 1 billion people had disappeared into the darkness. Entire countries had gone silent. The great cities of the world stood empty, filled only with shadows that moved and whispered and waited for more prey to come. But humanity had not given up. In hidden bases under mountains and deep beneath the ocean, scientists worked day and night. They studied every piece of information they could find about the enemy. They tested every weapon, every theory, every idea. Most failed. But failure was just another step toward success. Doctor was a physicist from Nigeria. He was a quiet man who preferred books to people and numbers to words. Before the invasion, he had spent his life studying things that most people could not understand. Now he studied For months, he watched recordings of the aliens. He measured their movements. He analyzed the energy they produced. And slowly, he began to understand what they really were. They are not fully in our world, he explained to Admiral one morning. They exist partly in another dimension, a place where light does not reach. That is why our weapons pass through them. We are shooting at shadows, and shadows have no body to hit. Then how do we fight them? Asked the Admiral. Doctor smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in months. We do not attack their bodies. We attack the connection between their dimension and ours. Strong electromagnetic pulses, tuned to the right frequency, can break that connection. It forces them to become solid. And once they are solid, they can be killed. The discovery changed everything. Within weeks, a secret program called Project Prometheus began. Factories that had once made cars and phones now made weapons of a new kind. Every gun, every tank, every ship was modified to produce electromagnetic pulses. Soldiers trained with new equipment that glowed with blue light. But the weapons were only part of the answer. A resistance fighter named Sergeant found the other part. Was born in Lagos, Nigeria. She had been a police officer before the invasion. When they came to her city, she did not run. She gathered everyone she could find and led them into the tunnels beneath the streets. For months, they had hidden in the darkness, stealing food and supplies, trying to survive. One night, noticed something strange. The never came near the generator room where her people kept their lights running. The shadows seemed to stop at the edge of the light and go no further. She decided to test her idea. She took 10 car batteries and connected them to the lights she could find. Then she walked toward a group of that had been hunting her people for weeks. The shadows turned toward her. They began to move closer, hungry for another victim. felt the cold touch of fear in her heart, but she did not run. She stood her ground and turned on the lights. The effect was immediate. They screamed. It was the first time any human had heard them make a sound. The light burned them like fire burns paper. They tried to flee but followed them with her lights. One by one, the shadows dissolved into nothing. When the news reached Admiral, she understood immediately. "They are creatures of darkness," she said. "Light is not just uncomfortable for them, it is deadly." The strategy became clear. Humanity would fight with two weapons: electromagnetic pulses to make the enemy solid and intense light to destroy them. Soldiers were given armor that glowed. Tanks were covered in spotlights. Aircraft carried bombs that exploded into pure white light. More importantly, people began to hope again. Safe zones were created in places where the sun never set: Antarctica in summer, the far northern lands, and artificial domes where lights burned 24 hours a day. Millions of refugees fled to these bright places where the shadows could not follow. The nations of Earth, which had so often fought each other, now worked as one. Russian scientists shared their research with American engineers. Chinese factories built weapons designed by European experts. Old enemies became brothers in the fight against a common threat. They noticed the change. They had conquered 1,000 worlds, and on every world the pattern had been the same. The prey would fight at first, then give up, then accept their fate. But these humans were different. The longer the war continued, the harder they fought. They did not break. They did not surrender. They adapted. They watched from its ship above the Earth. There was the oldest of a consciousness that had lived for 100,000 years. It had seen countless species rise and fall. It had fed on billions of minds. It had never known failure. But now, for the first time, they felt something it did not recognize. The humans were not behaving as prey should behave. They were learning. They were changing. They were becoming dangerous. "They are only animals," they told itself. "They will break eventually. They always break." But even as it spoke these words, they was not sure it believed them. On Earth, Admiral stood before her army. 1,000,000 soldiers, all wearing armor that glowed with blue and white light. Behind them stood 10,000 tanks and aircraft, all modified for the war against shadows. Above them, 300 warships waited in orbit, ready to strike. "For 6 months we have been prey," Admiral said. Her voice was broadcast to every soldier, every ship, every hidden base on Earth. "For 6 months we have run and hidden and watched our people die. That ends today." She raised her hand toward the sky, where the ships floated in the darkness. "Today we stop running. Today we start hunting. Today we show these creatures from beyond the stars what happens when they threaten our home." The soldiers cheered. The sound was like thunder rolling across the earth. In their ships above, they heard it too. For the first time in their ancient history, they felt something cold moving through their minds. It was fear. The counterattack was about to begin. The attack began at dawn on every continent at once. Admiral had named it Operation Daybreak, and it was the largest military action in human history. 1,000,000 soldiers moved against the shadow-held cities. 10,000 aircraft filled the skies. In orbit, 300 warships fired their weapons at the alien fleet. In the first city to fall, human forces pushed through the empty streets. They wore armor that glowed with bright white light. They carried weapons that fired electromagnetic pulses. Every step was a fight against the darkness. They had never faced resistance like this. They came out of the shadows, reaching for the soldiers with arms made of pure darkness. But when they touched the light, they burned. When the pulse weapons hit them, they became solid, and then the light weapons finished them. "Keep moving," shouted the commanding officer. "Do not let them regroup." Building by building, street by street, the humans took back their city. The shadows fled before them. For the first time since the invasion began, they were the ones running. But victory came at a terrible cost. The aliens did not give up easily. They attacked from every direction, from above and below, from inside walls and under floors. Many soldiers fell. Their screams echoed through the empty streets as the darkness took them. But for every human that fell, 10 more stepped forward to take their place. In Mumbai, the battle was even harder. They had made the city their main base on Earth. Millions of them gathered there, feeding on the captured humans who still lived in the darkness. When the attack began, they fought back with all their strength. Sargent led the assault on the city center. She had been promoted after her discovery about light, but she still preferred to fight on the front lines. Her eyes were covered with special goggles because the intense light from her own armor would blind her otherwise. "Stay together," she ordered her squad. "The darkness cannot touch us if we stay in the light." They pushed forward through streets that had once been filled with life. Now there was only silence and shadow. They came at them in waves, screaming their terrible screams, trying to break through the light that protected the soldiers. Saw a group of civilians trapped in a building, surrounded by shadows. Without hesitation, she ran toward them. Her squad followed. They cut through the darkness with their lights and pulled the survivors to safety. "Thank you," whispered an old woman. "We thought no one would come." "We will always come," replied. "That is what humans do." Above the Earth, the space battle was the most spectacular sight in history. The human fleet faced the motherships, which were larger than mountains and darker than the space around them. Admiral commanded the attack from her flagship, the UES Unity. "All ships fire at will," she ordered. Thousands of missiles and energy beams struck the alien vessels. The new weapons worked. Where the pulses hit, the shadow ships became solid. Where the light bombs exploded, great holes were torn in the alien fleet. But they had weapons too. Beams of pure darkness shot from their ships, swallowing anything they touched. Dozens of human ships were destroyed in the first minutes of battle. The crews did not even have time to scream. Captain commanded the destroyer UES Defiance. He was a young man, only 30 years old, but he had proven himself in many battles. Now he faced the greatest challenge of his life. "Captain, the main enemy ship is preparing to fire on Earth," reported his first officer. "If that beam hits the surface, millions will die." Looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. They knew what had to be done. They had known it from the moment they saw the enemy flagship. "Set course for the enemy ship," ordered. "Maximum speed. Prepare to overload the reactor." No one argued. No one asked questions. They simply obeyed. The Defiance shot forward, heading straight for the heart of the alien flagship. They tried to stop them. Beams of darkness struck the small ship again and again. The shields failed. The hull began to break apart, but still the Defiance flew on. In the final moment, Captain gave one last order. "For Earth, for humanity, light the fire." The fusion reactor exploded. But it was not a normal explosion. The engineers had modified it to release all its energy as pure white light. A new sun was born in the sky above Earth. It lasted only a second, but in that second, it burned a hole through the enemy flagship that was visible from the planet's surface. They screamed across their entire fleet. They had lost their greatest ship. They had lost thousands of their brothers, and they had learned something that shook them to their core. Humans would die to protect their world. They would sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They would turn their own deaths into weapons. Back on Earth, the battle for Lagos was reaching its end. Forces had pushed them back to the port, where the last of the shadows were trying to escape. "We have them trapped," said one of her officers. "But they are strong here. We need more light." Looked at the generators her squad carried. They were almost empty. There was only one way to create enough light to destroy the remaining enemy. "Overload the generators," she ordered, "all of them." "But Sergeant, the flash will blind anyone nearby." Removed her goggles. "I know, do it." The generators exploded in a storm of light. They burned and died. The battle was won. but when the light faded, could see nothing. The flash had taken her sight forever. Her squad found her standing among the bodies of dead aliens, her blind eyes staring at a sky she could no longer see. "We won," she said simply. "That is enough." Across the world the news spread. They were retreating. Their ships were leaving orbit. For the first time since the invasion began, the skies were clear of shadow. They sent a message to its scattered forces. "Withdraw, regroup. These creatures are not what we expected." Admiral received reports from every front. Victory, victory, victory. But she did not celebrate. She knew this was not the end. They would return. They would bring more ships, more shadows, more darkness. "We have won the battle," she said to her officers. "But the war is not over. It will not be over until we make sure they can never threaten us again." She looked up at the stars, where the enemy had fled. "We will follow them," she said. "We will find their home, and we will finish this." 1 year had passed since the Battle of Earth. The cities were being rebuilt. The dead were being mourned. And the leaders of humanity faced the most important decision in their history. Admiral stood before the United Earth Council. Behind her, screens showed images of the damage they had caused. 2 billion people dead or missing. Hundreds of cities destroyed. Scars on the earth that would take generations to heal. "They will return," Admiral said. "We hurt them, but we did not destroy them. They have existed for millions of years. They have consumed thousands of worlds. They will rebuild their fleet and they will come back for revenge." "Then we will fight them again," said one council member. "We won before. We can win again." "Can we?" Admiral asked. "We won because they were not prepared for us. They thought we were weak. They will not make that mistake twice. The next time they come, they will bring everything they have." The room was silent. Everyone knew she was right. "There is another choice," Admiral continued. "We do not wait for them to return. We take the fight to them. We find there and we destroy them before they can destroy us." The council debated for 3 days. Some said it was too dangerous. Some said it was impossible. But in the end, they voted to approve the mission. Humanity would not wait for the darkness to return. Humanity would hunt the darkness to its source. The next 2 years were spent building the greatest fleet ever created. Using technology taken from captured ships, scientists developed engines that could travel faster than light. Doctor led the team that created the ultimate weapon, a bomb that could turn an entire planet into a ball of pure light. 500 warships were built. 2 million soldiers volunteered to crew them. They called it the Armada of Sol, named after the sun that had always protected Earth from the darkness. General, now blind but still fierce, commanded the ground forces. She had spent the year training her soldiers for what waited at the end of their journey. She knew better than anyone what they were capable of. "On their world there will be no sun," she told her troops. "No natural light at all. Every step will be a fight against the darkness. Some of you will not return. But those who do will know that they saved every human who will ever live." On the day of departure, Admiral addressed the entire fleet. Her face appeared on screens across 500 ships. 2 million soldiers listened to her words. "We are about to do something that has never been done before," she said. "We are taking the war to an enemy who has never been challenged in their own home. They have spent millions of years believing they are the hunters and everyone else is prey. We are going to teach them how wrong they are." She paused, looking at the stars that filled the behind her. "The journey will take 2 years. It will be hard. It will be lonely. But at the end of it, we will have the chance to end this war forever. Not just for ourselves, but for every species that have ever threatened. We fight for Earth. We fight for humanity. We fight for the light." The fleet launched. Earth grew smaller behind them until it was just another star in the sky. Then even that disappeared as the ships jumped into faster-than-light travel. The journey was long and difficult. The ships flew through regions of space that no human had ever seen. They passed dead worlds that they had consumed long ago. They saw the bones of civilizations that had failed where humanity had succeeded. Doctor spent the voyage improving his weapons. He knew that ordinary light would not be enough to destroy the. He needed something more powerful, something that would burn away every shadow forever. The bomb uses fusion technology, he explained to Admiral one day. When it explodes, it will ignite the atmosphere of the planet itself. Everything on the surface will be exposed to light brighter than 1,000 suns. Nothing will survive. What about our forces on the ground? Admiral asked. Doctor was silent for a moment. They will need to evacuate before the bomb is used. There will be no time to spare. Admiral understood. Some soldiers would not make it off the planet in time. She accepted this truth. So did every soldier in the fleet. They had not come this far expecting to all return home. General trained her troops every day. Though she could not see, she could hear and feel better than most. She walked among her soldiers, correcting their movements, teaching them how to fight in total darkness. They are strongest in their home, she said. They will know every shadow, every corner, every place to hide, but they have never faced humans on their own ground. They do not know what we are capable of. After 2 years of travel, the Armada of Sol finally reached its destination. The planet Aura hung in space before them. It was a world of eternal night, orbiting a dying red star that gave almost no light. The surface was covered in structures that seemed to be made of solid darkness. They sensed the approaching fleet. For a moment, it could not understand what it was seeing. No species had ever followed the home. No species had ever dared to attack them in their place of power. The very idea was impossible. But the humans were here. Their ships filled the space around the planet. Their weapons were pointed at the world that had called home for 100,000 years. Admiral opened a communication channel. Her message was broadcast not just to her own fleet, but to every on the planet below. You came to our world, she said. You killed our people, you called us prey. You thought we would be easy to consume, just like all the others you have destroyed over the ages. She leaned forward, her eyes cold and hard. You were wrong, we are not prey, we are not victims, we are humanity, and we have come to your home to teach you what that means. She cut the channel and gave the order her soldiers had been waiting 2 years to hear. All forces attack. The Battle of Aura had begun. The skies above Aura erupted into the greatest battle the galaxy had ever seen. 500 human warships faced a swarm of shadow vessels that numbered in the thousands. Beams of light and darkness crossed through space. Ships exploded on both sides. Fire and shadow mixed together in a terrible dance of destruction. Admiral commanded from the bridge of the UES Unity. Around her, officers shouted reports and orders. The situation was desperate. They had more ships than expected. They were fighting with a fury born from fear and rage. We are losing ships too fast, shouted her first officer. At this rate, we will be destroyed before the ground forces can complete their mission. Then we fight harder, Admiral replied. Draw their attention, keep them focused on us. Give our soldiers the time they need. On the surface below, General led the assault on the enemy capital. Though she could not see the nightmare world around her, she could feel it. The cold, the silence, the weight of darkness pressing against her from every direction. All units stay in formation, she ordered. Keep your lights active at all times. We move together or we die alone. Her soldiers pushed through streets that had never known sunlight. The buildings around them were made of something that was not stone or metal. It seemed to be made of shadow, cold and smooth and wrong. They came at them from every direction, screaming their terrible screams, trying to break through the wall of light that protected the humans. The fighting was brutal. Every street was a battlefield. Every building held enemies. Soldiers fell by the hundreds, pulled into the darkness, their lights going out one by one. But the humans did not stop. They did not retreat. They pushed forward step by bloody step toward the center of the alien city. "General, we have reached the target area," reported one of her officers. "The entrance to this chamber is just ahead." Felt the weight of what was about to happen. Behind her, 1,000 soldiers had followed her into the heart of darkness. Many would not leave. She had accepted this. They had all accepted this. "Prepare the bomb," she ordered. "I will go in alone." "General, that is suicide." "Perhaps," replied, "but someone must someone must make sure the bomb is placed correctly. I have lived my life fighting the darkness. Let me end it the same way." Her soldiers wanted to argue, but they knew better. They watched as their blind general walked alone into the deepest shadow on the planet. Inside the chamber, they waited. It was vast beyond human understanding, a consciousness that had existed for 100,000 years. It had consumed billions of minds. It had destroyed thousands of civilizations. It had never known defeat. Until now. "Little human," the spoke directly into his mind, "you cannot understand what you face. I am eternal. I am darkness itself. You are nothing but a spark that will be snuffed out and forgotten." Smiled. She could feel the bomb against her chest, waiting to be activated. She could feel the cold of the pressing against her thoughts, but she was not afraid. "You have lived for 100,000 years," she said, "but you have never understood life. You see other beings as food to be consumed. We see other beings as family to be protected. That is why you will lose. That is why you have already lost." The laughed. The sound was like ice breaking in a frozen sea. "I will simply take your mind and learn all your secrets. Your fleet will be destroyed. Your planet will be consumed. In 1,000 years, no one will remember that humanity ever existed." "Perhaps," said, "but I think you will remember us forever." She activated the bomb. In orbit, Admiral received the signal. The bomb was in place. The ground forces were retreating to their ships as fast as they could, but they were pressing hard, trying to prevent the humans from escaping. "Admiral, we cannot hold them back much longer," shouted her first officer. Looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there was facing the Alone. The bomb would detonate in 10 minutes. Many soldiers would not make it back in time, including herself. The UES Unity had taken heavy damage. Its engines were failing. It could not escape the blast radius before the bomb went off. Admiral had known this was possible when she planned the mission. She had accepted it. "All ships retreat to safe distance," she ordered. "I will stay behind to cover the evacuation." "Admiral, no." "That is an order." Her voice was calm and steady. "Get our people home. Tell them what we did here. Tell them that the shadows are gone forever." The fleet retreated. The Unity stayed behind, firing at the ships that tried to pursue. One by one, the enemy vessels turned to destroy her. She fought them alone, buying time with every second of battle. In the chamber below, felt the bomb counting down its final seconds. There was trying to stop it, trying to break into her mind and learn how to disable it. But its will was stronger than any shadow. "You should have left us alone," she said. "You should have stayed in your darkness and never come to Earth, but you did not. And now you will learn what happens when you threaten humanity." "What are you?" they screamed. "What are you?" Smiled one last time. "We are human, and humans never give up." The bomb exploded. It was not an ordinary explosion. Doctor had designed it to ignite the very atmosphere of the planet. A wave of pure white light spread from the center of the city, growing larger and brighter with every passing second. The dying red star above seemed dim compared to the new sun being born on the surface. They screamed. Millions of them burned in an instant. The ancient and powerful felt something it had never felt before, the end. Its 100,000-year existence was erased in a flash of light brighter than anything it had ever seen. The light reached into orbit. The UES Unity was caught in its edge. Admiral stood on her bridge and watched the wave approaching. She did not look away. She had fought the darkness all her life. It was fitting that she would die in the greatest light the galaxy had ever seen. "Well done," she whispered. "Well done, everyone." The light took her. When the surviving fleet returned to Earth, they carried news of total victory. They were destroyed. There was nothing but a ball of cooling stone, forever lit by the artificial sun that humanity had created in its heart. General and Admiral were declared heroes. Monuments were built in their honor. Songs were sung about their courage. Children learned their names in school and dreamed of being as brave as they had been. Doctor, now old and gray, returned to her observatory on the moon. She watched the stars as she had always done. But now the stars were different. Now they held no shadows, no threats, no darkness coming to consume the Earth. Other species began to reach out to humanity. They had heard stories of the small blue world that had defeated the. They wanted to meet the beings who had done the impossible. They wanted to be friends with the species that had looked into the darkness and made the darkness blink. Doctor smiled as she watched the first alien ambassadors arrive on Earth. The world had changed. The universe had changed. Humanity had changed. They were no longer just inhabitants of one small planet. They were a force that shaped the galaxy itself. The shadows from beyond the stars had come to consume them. They had failed. And now, wherever humanity went, they carried the light with them. The age of darkness was over. The age of humanity had begun.